Hi everyone, my name is Jaison Mathew. In this video, I'm going to talk about Web-Auth. It's a L3 authentication available on Cisco Wireless LAN Controller, and it's widely used for guest access configuration. So, if you want more information on guest LAN creation, guest WLAN creation, you can follow the other video. So here I will talk about how to configure the Web-Auth in Wireless LAN Controller so that you can use that L3 authentication method on your WLAN. So before going to the WLAN specific configuration, let me talk about the global configuration. So as you can see here in under security, there is a Web-Auth tab on the left hand side. Then you can go into the main page, the login page. So here you can see there is a drop down list. So here you can see three different options. So first one is internal. So when you select internal and click on this preview button, you can see this is the login page. You are going to get it uh, on your client side. Whenever you are using web authentication, this is the page you are going to get it when you are configuring it as internal. The next option is to use customized and downloaded one. So I already covered that in a different video, how to download the Web-Auth bundle from Cisco site and customize it for your own company. You can change your pictures, logo and everything, so it will look like this. You can get the customized HTML file. You can customize this page by editing this HTML page in background. So I have the other video that covers how to do this kind of customization. Then next one, redirect URL. There is a box here, so you can use this redirect URL to get um, redirected after the authentication. After login, it will force your client to go to that particular page. That can be used for some kind of conditions, like you did the authentication but you want them to redirect to your company homepage or something. Even if they are looking for google.com, after authentication it will redirect to your company page so that you can show your ad or something like that. Then it's applicable for all the models. So even in internal you have an option to do that. Next one is external redirect or external server. So this is the one you can use it for redirecting your entire authentication done by a different server. Like the authentication page will be provided with by different server. So biggest advantage for this particular model is the half established connection on TCP can be diverted into a different server. So for an example, if you have a high density scenario, you have thousands of clients and everyone is coming and trying to connect to your system or something, that can impact your regular uh, client service on the controller side if you have high level of numbers or something. For an example, high density scenario. So what we can do is we can pass this load to an external server, and that external server will handle this particular session creation. So what will happen is you will ask for the web authentication. You will be asking for some web interface or any valid DNS entry. It will be like google.com or something, and that request will go to your external server, and external server will provide the the login page. Even if you are not logging in, that session will kept open. So that's the biggest problem everyone is going to face when you are using WebAuth. So if someone is requesting for a web page authentication, that particular session will open for authentication. But if you are not entering the username and password, it will kept for authentication for longer time. So that kind of load can be given to the external server. So because the external portal is coming from the external server. Then once you enter the username and password, it will again go back to your virtual interface and controller will do that authentication in background. But controller will be safe because your session is handled by a different server. So that's the biggest advantage on external redirect option. Then these are the three default settings you have in your controller as a global configuration. Then here you can see in preview, this one is showing Cisco logo on the right hand side. So if you want to hide that, you can click on hide, then apply, then a preview will not show that logo on the right hand side. So it's up to you. So if you're not interested to show Cisco logo, you can hide that. Then here you can type your messages. That will be displayed in your portal. So let me apply here, then click on preview. So you can see here that default message is changed to welcome to whatever I type in the other side. So these are the basic configurations. You can do it on the global side. Based on your requirement, you can do that. The next one is there are some configuration that is not available on GUI. So those information can be found. There are some not available on GUI. There are some available on the different tab. So there is one of them is controller tab. So here you can see it's a global configuration. So one thing here is the web authentication, web radius authentication. By default, it's using PAP. So PAP. So if you want to change this, by default it's PAP. If you want to change that, you have three options. You can even use CHAP and MD5 CHAP. So this is based on your radius server configuration, and however you want to use this authentication for Web-Auth, you can make that changes here. So this one is again a global configuration. Then next one is Web-Auth proxy redirection. So here what is going to happen is if you have a proxy in your network and you have to go through proxy while doing the web authentication, then this is the feature you have to use. Then you can enable this and you can give the proxy port number here, so that next time onwards the authentication will go through the proxy port number. So this is another global configuration you have to use if you are doing web authentication. Then there are some not even available on GUI. So this is the CLI for WLC, and as I said, there are some commands that is not available for GUI configuration. So one of them is, so most of the commands that is not available on GUI, you can find it on the CLI. So config network web-auth, then you can see the different available options here. So some of them, one of them is HTTPS redirect. So previously we were supporting, Cisco was supporting only HTTP forwarding redirection. So right now with the latest code, we Cisco supports HTTPS redirect also, but this one is going to take some extra effort on the authentication side. So it's not that recommended in high density deployments, but in normal scenario, if you want to enable HTTPS redirect, you can use that. Then other configurations, whatever you want to do through CLI, whatever is not available on GUI, can be found under this particular section. This is the WLAN I created for this particular session. So under security, you can see you have layer 2 and layer 3. So web authentication is coming under layer 3, as I said earlier. So you have to, by default, it will be a none. So you have to select web policy here. That means you are going to use L3 authentication for this particular WLAN. So one of the main thing you have to make sure is you should have a valid DNS server, and that DNS server IP should be passed to the client using DSCP options. So if you don't have valid DNS server, maybe that DNS request coming from the client side will not get resolved, and controller will not be able to give the login page. So you have to make sure your infrastructure is ready to take this configuration or this kind of authentication method. So under web policy, you can see lot of options here. So the first one is authentication. So I already shown the authentication, how that page will look like. So when we clicked on that preview, you saw the page something like this, not the same, the default one coming from internally. So you will enter your username and password and you will click on the agree policy. Then you are done. Your authentication is done. So based on your AAA configuration in the global side or the WLAN side, it will do the authentication on that username and password. And once it's done, it will change the Web-Auth record state into run state, and your client will start passing the traffic. The next option is pass-through. So this is the authentication method as pass-through. So this is the feature used by most of the big sales stores and all big supermarkets, hypermarket or whatever it is. So they are using it for providing an internet access to the customers that are coming into their stores. So pass-through means you are basically not doing an authentication because you don't know how many customers are going to come, and it's not even scalable, because if you have thousands of customers coming every day visiting your store, and if you have to keep giving username and password, it's not practically possible. So so in this scenario, what will happen is we can enable this particular feature, pass-through feature. So what will happen is you will get a login page. This is not something something as our previous page asking for username and password. Here what will happen is it will just show your policy, how you have to behave in your network, what are the policies you have to keep it in mind while using the internet. So once you read this policy, you can just simply click on accept, and your authentication part is done. So you don't have to enter any username or password for this particular authentication model. So this is preferred by most of the customers who is having big customer base in the store or something. So normally they will create a guest SSID, and they will have their own anchor controller in background, and that will taken care of your entire traffic flow. Any kind of filtering will be done through the controller, anchor controller sitting behind your DMC zone. So that is something I already covered in a different video, how to create a guest access, how to do that mobility anchor, auto anchor system. So that is already covered. So here this is the pass through. You will get a page. Just accept on, just click on the accept button. You are done. You are going to pass the traffic. So along with pass through, you have an option to ask for an email input. So if you check this box, you are going to get a different page altogether. So when you check this page, when you check this checkbox, you are going to get a page like this. Sorry, not this, this. So what will happen is instead of just accepting it, you will this page will ask for inputting an email ID. So you can put any email ID, but minimum requirement is you should be having an @ symbol in your email ID. If that is missing, this particular character is missing, maybe it will not accept that email ID. So that's only validation done from the controller side or the HTML side, because all other things we can't validate. So then just give email ID and just click on accept, and your authentication is completed. But what will happen in background, there is no authentication. As I said, there is no authentication, but there is an accounting happening when you are using this email address option. So these are the fields going to send to your Redis server. So based on your configuration on the controller, these are the information getting passed to your Redis server in background, the accounting server, so that you will get the information about that client. The email address will be there, and your client IP will be there, client MAC will be there. So these are the some of the information getting passed to your accounting server. This is really helpful to keep a track on your customers. So that is one. And second one, another good feature available in pass-through is this sleeping client. So the minimum requirement for any customer is you are getting a customer and you are expecting that customer to be a regular customer for you, and you don't want to give more pain to that customer by asking to put authentication or the accept these terms and conditions for longer time. So Cisco WLC have a feature called as a sleeping client. So what this one will do is, even if your client moved away from your network, it will keep that client entry for the time frame whatever you configured here. So this particular time frame you have maximum of 30 days. So you can see, you can do the math with 43 200 minute. So that comes around 30 days. So that's a maximum value. So up to 30 days, our controller will keep that information, and whenever this client comes back to your network, that will be treated as a sleeping client, and it will get direct access without doing an authentication, or the authentication page will not be displayed for that client. So this is one of the another feature that used by most of the customers. You can set the value based on that. So by this pass-through is completed, then next one is conditional web redirect. So conditional web redirect is something like you already have an L2 authentication in background. So here we made it as none. So here you can go for WPA2 or you can go for 8.2.1x. So even with this configuration, you will do the authentication in background. If that got failed, then this redirect will happen. So this particular web authentication will happen only if your L2 authentication is failed. So this works with .1x and WPA 1 and 2. So that's the only condition conditional web redirect will work. So normally it will not ask for any username and password. If your L2 is authentication is done, you are completed your authentication and you can start using it. But if your L2 authentication is failed, this one will change to web redirect. Then next one is splash page. So here what will happen is the splash page will be displayed. So you will not do any authentication. There will be a page shown as a splash page, and this is basically, you can even get this splash page from your ICE server or whatever it is. WPA2 is enabled and MAC filtering is enabled. Then you have splash page in background. Now what will happen is in this authentication, once this authentication is completed, it will give a attribute from your Redis server. The URL redirect attribute will be getting pushed. Then that link will be shown as your splash page. So it will just give a page that shows that, okay, this is the information I want to show to you before you get into your network. So that that will be the splash page configuration. Then next one is on MAC address failure. So this is another feature. So if you have MAC filtering here, then MAC filtering is enabled. Then if MAC filtering is failed, then the authentication will happen on the Web-Auth model. The L3 authentication will come into picture. Otherwise, MAC address authentication is done and you can free to pass through. Not pass through, you can free to use the network. Then next one is pre-auth ACL. Here you can see you can configure a pre-auth ACL. So this ACL will be applied before your authentication. When you are in Web-Auth required state, this will be the ACL running in background that blocks other traffic or whatever is based on your requirement. You want to allow some traffic or you want to block some traffic. It's completely depends on your requirement, but this is the ACL you can apply for blocking this. But when we are using Flex Connect, that this ACL will not work. So for that local switching, you have an option to use Flex Connect ACL. So you can create a Flex Connect ACL. Right now I don't have the Flex Connect ACL configured on this WLC. So if you have that Flex Connect ACL, you can use that here, so that in local switching also you can apply that ACL thing. And I already covered the sleeping client feature, so that that is something I already covered. Then next one, the global configuration we already show, like I already explained the global configuration under security tab. They were both different models. So if you want to override that on some SSID, so for an example, you want to give multiple multiple guest access on your network, and in that case you can't use same authentication method for multiple, like your requirement will keep changing. So if you want to customize that, you can use this override model. Then you can select any model you want to use it for this SSID. Then you can click on apply by giving the right information. Then this particular SSID will override your global configuration. That's how it works. So if you have that kind of scenario, you can use this. Then next one is in AAA server. I already mentioned about 3 different options. So LDAP radius, those AAA configuration part or LDAP configuration part will be covered in different video. So here this is the authentication order that used for Web-Auth users. So the authentication priority for Web-Auth. So by default it's going to ask for local. If that local, this is the default value, so you can keep changing it. So local will be having the highest priority by default. So local user is not available, it will go for radius. If radius is also not available, it will ask for the LDAP. So if in this condition, if you want to make these changes, you can select the required method and you can go up. Basically you are saying that you have to use LDAP. So you have to have this kind of configuration already done on the controller. So that part is done in security. You have LDAP session, you have to do that LDAP server settings and everything here. Then if you want to use radius server, you have to do that configuration under radius. If you want to use any other local users are going to come under local net users. So whatever users available here, they can use it. So these are the 3 different methods available under Web-Auth authentication. You can use either local, or you can use radius server, or you can use LDAP. So that's it. Then next one, what I missed is under Web-Auth you have an option to use the certificate based authentication. So the certificate upload for Web-Auth. By default the certificate information can be found here. So if you want to upload your separate certificate, you have an option to use download SSL certificate here. You can pass the information about your certificate, the location, then you can click on apply. It will upload that file, the certificate, into your system. SSL certificate upload can be done here. So we already covered all the L3 authentication types here. So one more thing I want to give is if you are using any ICE or any other server to do the authentication, means the authentication portal is coming from that ICE. You have 2 options. Either you can, as I said earlier, it will be a URL redirect attribute getting pushed in background. So if you are doing that kind of method, as I said earlier, your DNS server should have the host name. So for an example, you are trying to access your ICE. So if you are putting that ICE server ICE in DNS name, the name, that client should be able to resolve that name. Otherwise the login redirect will not work. So either you can give the name with a valid DNS server in your network, or you can give IP address as URL redirect, so that you don't need DNS authentication in background. And there are other authentication methods, like MSC is doing the authentication. So if you have a MSC server, MSC mobility service engine in your network, and you want to do the authentication using MSC, that is little different than the normal ICE based authentication, because it's not going to provide a URL redirect or something. It will be using APIs to directly communicate with your controller to change the run state. So for an example, you are using ICE for authentication, and your client is trying to authenticate with ICE. And once you are done with the authentication, ICE has to pass that information to your controller back. Otherwise this client will get stuck in Web-Auth required state. So if you have that kind of deployment, this ICE is going to not ICE, the MSC is going to send APIs to the controller, so that controller can change the client state machine from Web-Auth to Web-Auth required state to run state. So that is done through a API communication between MSC and the controller. So ICE, if you are using for ICE, that is done through URL redirect, and that is completely different model of doing web-auth. So hope this one will help you in configuring your web authentication or the L3 authentication based on your requirement. Um, you can choose any one of these features, any one of these models. You can use it on your network. Hope this one is useful for you. Thank you for watching.